All right, Ingram Smith back again for another instant reaction podcast. Florida State's played 3 games. Florida State's lost 3 games at this point. Going to be a season the likes of which I'm not sure many of us could have imagined, as far as you're legitimately looking down the barrel of maybe winning 1 or 2 games. So this is an instant reaction podcast. We don't watch film. We don't do anything other than sit down behind a microphone shortly after the game ends and try to give you all as good of an idea as to what we saw out there. As always, thank you to our sponsors, Louisiana Hot Sauce, Tarpon Cellars, Congruity, the good people at Hamilton Home Loans, Chad and Shannon, and obviously the people at For the Table Restaurant Group. Oh man, so I'm trying to figure out exactly how I put into words what I just saw today. This is going to be tough. So let me start with this, so that it's not a but and anybody thinks I'm trying to make excuses with this coaching staff or whatever else. On a down-to-down perspective, Florida State played okay today. It wasn't great. But situationally, Florida State played pathetically poorly. Last week, I thought the coaching staff really let the players down. This week, I think a lot of players had really bad moments. And unfortunately, those bad moments came in some of the more impactful moments and deciding moments of the football game. And certainly the coaching staff did not help them a whole lot in this manner either. So, we'll have a chance to, on Monday night, look more at the details of the game. I'm going to go a little bit more broader perspective here. Mike Norville is coaching for his job. He's coaching for his job in 2022. Nothing's going to happen this year. We don't need to fool ourselves into any kind of conversation like that. 1, you can't afford it. 2, you can't afford it from a PR perspective. Or when I say PR, I mean trying to approach anyone in the future with the idea of taking this job. But in year 3, you might see a coaching change. And Mike Norville has to start coaching with that in mind. And when I say that, I mean that Florida State's going to have to go pretty strong youth movement here, in my opinion. You might win 2 games, maybe 3. At this point, I think 3 is expressing a level of optimism that most in the fan base would probably not have. I expect to see wholesale changes, secondary perhaps being one of the first places. But the first that I maybe hope to see it more than expected is, with all due respect to the kid, I don't know that I need to see a whole lot more of Mackenzie Milton. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody. It was a rough game for him. Some of those turnovers, kind of 50-50 balls that go the wrong way, fumble on the goal line, whatever. You are coaching for your job, and McKenzie's not going to be here next year. He's also, you can't just be a practice player, and you can't just be a game player. To an extent, those two, the reality of the situation, you kind of find themselves in between the two. And some of those practices that we were concerned about, that was kind of the Mackenzie Milton you got today. Like I said, a couple of those interceptions, or at least one of them, a little bit unlucky, but he also had another ball wildly behind a wide receiver that almost turned into an interception, and it was just not his day. That kind of makes what happened last week all the more hard for me to understand. I mean, I don't so this will get more to my concern. All right, let me hit youth movement first, then I'll get more to my concern. So in the secondary, I expect you to see a decent amount of youth movement. At wide receiver, I don't really know that you have the bodies to do it. At offensive line, you got to play whoever. I mean, I'll reiterate the fact that we said that if Scott, your Arkansas version of Scott, wasn't playing today, that Florida State had a real legitimate chance of losing by 20 plus. So that's what we said in the preview. And when Robert Scott was not out there, and unfortunately that prediction, or at least that concern from when Mr. Bud Elliott played out all too accurately for many who choose to cheer for Florida State. So you have the situation at offensive line. It is what it is. You can't do any youth movement there. You just have to play the 4 or 5 able bodies that you have and hope that Maurice Smith comes back at some point in time and, can add a decent level of play to the center position. At defensive line, that's a little bit tough. Number 11's been your best player this year. 0 has looked really good at times. And you don't have a whole lot of youth there to rotate, but I'd still expect some, quicker substitutions when it comes to that position. Linebacker is the mess that it is. And secondary, I think, is the place where you could really see this take place. I think you could see an awful lot, and to an extent, I hope you see an awful lot of guys like Shaheem Brown and some of the other younger players in the secondary that have more recently signed with Florida State. If your coordinator leaves on the defensive side of the ball, we've got a lot of time to figure that out. It certainly wouldn't surprise me at this point in time. It's just a mess. It's a mess that we're 3 games into this year and you're already writing off the season. It's a mess that you're 15 games into Mike Norville's career. And we all have to look at ourselves in the mirror and realize that I don't think there's any possible way that he loses his job this year, but it's hard for me to see anything other than a coach coaching for his job next year. And, Florida State was certainly their own worst enemy today, whether it was roughing the punter, whether it was getting a personal foul, throwing a guy out of bounds. Now, to be fair, it's a tough call on Jones. I won't say it's wholly unwarranted, but you put yourself in a bad situation there, and then a ref who wasn't in a great place to make the decision ultimately made the decision that he threw the guy down, or at least, judged that his initial continuation of the play out of bounds was aggressive enough in a manner to warrant flag. I thought that was a tough call, but still really frustrated with Jones's level of play in general. And I think he overreacted after giving him up a touchdown, and that receiver who initially made the catch on the ball that I'm talking about, where you get another flag on 3rd down, was pretty decently open, and Jones tried to be aggressive and ultimately got a 15-yard penalty on him. I thought the roughing call on the punter was questionable. Again, could have been roughing, could have been running into. Unfortunately, that went against you. It was just a tough day. I mean, Jayshon Corbin, been one of your better players, immediately fumbles the ball back after you get an interception there on the first possession, where I thought you were probably fortunate enough to get a pass interference call. But this is a disjointed podcast right now, and that was just a wildly disjointed day for Florida State. My concern that I was getting to a couple minutes ago is that this coaching staff, and mainly your head coach, is starting to kind of rat trap. I think he's making decisions that if he were in the cold light of a day on a Tuesday, he himself probably wouldn't make. The 4th down call to Mackenzie Milton, I'll have to take a look at that. Like I said, this is an instant reaction. If Mackenzie checked into that, I won't have nearly the criticism that I had immediately afterwards. If there were, great numbers on that side of the ball and you tried to run that play and you had, hat on hat assigned and felt you had some kind of numerical advantage, then I guess I'm okay with it. But that's just a really questionable call. The staff has done some real questionable things. And when you're 0-3, things that are, questionable turn into raging criticisms with a fan base that has a hard time accepting where they are. So I think this Florida State fan base was prepared to climb. I think this Florida State fan base was prepared to win 5 games. I mean, I think anywhere between, 4 and 6 wins this year was kind of the expectation of most. Obviously, you're going to have those on message boards that think you're going to win 9 games or something like that. But, most people with level head expected you to win 5 games, maybe 4. One of the guys whose opinion I value the most, covering Florida State, told me about a week before the season that he thought this team would win 4 games. I don't know that you're going to win 2. So you're staring a disaster right in the face in a season in which there weren't very high expectations. I mean, people knew you were going to be fairly poor. You can talk about not having talent on this roster, and to an extent that's true. But talent, you aren't a one-game win talent. You aren't a two-game win talent. This coaching staff is underperforming right now in a kind of wildly aggressive manner at times. Your record is what it is, but some of the decisions that have been paired with it are certainly going to play a role in kind of the erosion of support that this coaching staff is facing right now. And this university, obviously, this is all comes down to a business and how many people are going to make their way to Tallahassee after that start. Unfortunately, is not nearly as many as those in and around Tallahassee and Florida State would like. So again, on a down-to-down, play-to-play basis, Florida State played okay today. They had their moments. They also had some real poor moments. They let Wake get behind them on the one play there. Brownlee did. That's frustrating, but for the most part, this game was lost on plays that were 3, 4, 5, 6 yards. I will say, just in the initial watch, that I was really frustrated by how many times Wake Forest running back, but even the quarterback just kind of put his shoulder down and picked up an extra 2, 3, 4 yards. Now, part of that probably has something to do with the type of offense they play and the fact that you are certainly not allowed the aggressiveness that you would like, and when compared to playing other styles of offense. But part of that was just a team that didn't quite have whatever it's required from a defensive mentality. Just some really sloppy tackling, and at times when you made the tackle, you were still giving up a decent chunk of yards, getting pushed back, and that's not something that I necessarily expected to see. So, but I will certainly give it a watch, try to get a feel for what happened at a greater level of nuance. But nothing more than a really disappointing day on a epically disappointing start of a season. Florida State is in, is going to have to look themselves in the mirror and figure out what to do. And they're also looking at themselves in the mirror, and they're going to have to figure out that 2 or 3 wins is about as good as you can hope, and you got to start coaching for 2022, because unfortunately, the 2021 season has started in a manner that has pretty much, I don't think there's a whole lot of saving this at this point. So, really disappointing day for Florida State, a day that Mike Norville is going to have to go back, look himself in the mirror, make decisions on both the roster and, maybe start to make some real hard decisions on his coaching staff, because everything's going to be play in 2022. And it's absurd that 3 games in, we have to turn our eyes to the next season. But this is a coach who's coaching for his life at Florida State beginning next year. And it would shock me to see him do anything other than begin to do that with this year's team and the amount of games that he has left on the schedule. So, obviously not the most fun to listen to instant reaction podcast, but that game was certainly not the most enjoyable to watch, and it would be disingenuous of me to sit here and present Florida State football in any other kind of light right now. So, as always, really appreciate you watching, appreciate you listening. We'll be back on Monday night with a fuller conversation, or at least I should say a more in-depth conversation. That was not a Freudian slip or any other slip. Oh, man. You're 0-3. Painful day. We'll move on. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.